Wilson Morales from Black Women TV here talking to the director, Nailah Jefferson, regarding her film, Donyale Luna, which is playing on HBO and Max, along with one of the producers, Isoul Harris. How's it going?
Good, good. How are you, Wilson?
Wow.
Good.
Yeah.
With any documentary, I always know that it's always a journey. Putting in, the research, getting the right people to get on record. What came first? Was it the director or the producer?
The producers originated this.
It's so funny. We've been telling this story for so long now, right? It definitely, you're right. You're absolutely right. It has been a journey, definitely a journey. So with this case, it was the producers first. So it was myself and Melissa Kramer. We both are, journalists and creative directors. I was the editor-in-chief of Uptown Magazine, and Melissa was a creative director of Uptown Magazine. And while we both were working there, Melissa happened upon Donyale's story, and we did a story on Donyale for a Black History Month story for Uptown Magazine. And after it ran, I basically looked at Melissa and said, Melissa, this story is too big just for Uptown. We have to do something with this. And in my mind, in that moment, I just knew it had to be a documentary. Like, it had to be a film. Had I ever made a documentary before? No, I had not. But I just knew in my mind that it was going to be a documentary. And so it just kind of went from there. And it was, and we just met people and we just kept going. And luckily enough, after the story ran, Donyale Luna, the supermodel who this documentary is about, her former manager saw the story and he reached out to us, and which was like the first connecting piece to this whole journey. And his name is Omar, and he's in the film. He happened to, God rest his soul, he passed away, but luckily he was able to participate in this film before he did pass away. And he's just an incredible individual.
When you're telling a story about somebody's life, you have to structure as far as, engaging the audience. Like, granted, this is a person for the most part, I never heard of, and I'm sure maybe some people, for the masses, they probably didn't know, except for people in the industry. So here you come, Nailah, in terms of like structuring it from a directing standpoint, as far as how are we going to tell the story to get people engaged? And we're going to get something that's outside of Wikipedia. Because sometimes you get these stories and it's like, oh, okay, they just kind of went point by point from what I had read for years. So talking about you coming on board and what did you want to do based on the producer's vision?
Well, yeah, first of all, I just want to say thank you to Isoul and Melissa for having the vision and the fortitude to kind of keep pushing the project forward for years. It took a very long time for it to get off the ground. And I wouldn't have had the opportunity to, come on and direct a film about such a fascinating, revolutionary figure had it not been for the years of work that they pushed this film. So thank you all. My goal, like when I first heard of Donyale Luna, you're right. It's just stuff on a Wikipedia page. And then you might see some other things here and there, but it's all pretty repetitive and it's all pretty thin. And so what I really wanted to do was give the audience a chance to have an accurate kind of biography of Donyale Luna. And when you start to lean in and talk to friends and family, you realize that, it's just the tip of the iceberg that's out there. And even in the little information that's out there, you find her fascinating already. But when you talk to friends and family, and it's 40 years, since she's been on this earth, and her presence is still it's still felt in her magic, the magic that she left, it still resonates. I knew that had to be in the film. So I knew this could not be a formulaic documentary. It had to feel like Luna for people to really get it. And so we wanted to make something immersive. We wanted to make something cinematic. And we also wanted to hold it up to the standard that Donyale Luna and Luigi set with all of the beautiful imagery that they created together. And so that's what I hope we have created. And what we've heard is that people walk away and they say it's magical. And that's what we wanted, because that's one word we kept hearing when people were describing Luna. She's magic. She's magic.
And a goddess.
Was it a journey tracking down the people who are close to her and getting them on record to talk about her?
Yeah, well, I'll let Isoul take that, because the first connection was Luigi, correct? That Melissa made?
Yeah, well, it was Omar, and then Omar, who was spoke about earlier, and then Luigi, who was Donyale's husband. So Melissa, the other producer, my producing partner, she was in contact with Luigi, and she started talking to him about, Donyale's history, Donyale's legacy, and the things they created together. And Melissa started to form a relationship with him that grew, and we had to gain his trust and his daughter, Dream, Donyale's daughter, Dream, who was 18 months old when her mother died. We had to gain their trust before the story could ever even like take flight. And, you know, Melissa was a huge part of that, and thankful for her for, you know, spearheading that. But yeah, we went from there, and basically, what I know I'm a little biased, but what I really love about this story is the fact that the people that we have in the film, like Nailah said, were people that really were close to Donyale, and they're really just interested in just telling Donyale's story. There were no hidden agendas. No one was pushing forth their agendas. It's all about Donyale Luna. And even the people who, someone like a Beverly Johnson, who was known to be the first Black woman on the cover of Vogue, before people found out about Donyale, Beverly was so gracious and so generous. She's in this story. And we found her, and she just gave us so much, you know, to this film, even introducing us to other people who she found out who knew Donyale. And she called me one day and said, I know of this guy named David Crowlin, who was roommates with Donyale Luna in Paris. You have to meet him. And so then she connected me to him, and then he's now part of the story. And as people will see, he is he's magic in this story, right? And he's just a point of comedy, and he just adds so much to the story. So yeah, it was almost like it was a village. It like really took a village for us to get this film made, and people were just so generous with their time and their resources and with their energy, and we were so appreciative. And heart
as well, because this is really a collection of people who loved her, and even if they didn't know her, like Beverly Johnson, they respected her. And then like the David Crowlin piece, like that's the other thing. There's so much misinformation and so many misconceptions about who Donyale was, because they didn't have the information to fill in the blanks. David Crowlin really fills in those blanks. Nobody really knew what she was doing in Paris. They saw the pictures, but they didn't know how she was living, right? And the same for Rome. Like if you research her, I think prior to this film, you don't really hear anything about her after 68, but it was 68 when she goes to Rome, and then she lives another 11 years. And nobody knew anything about that. But that's also why Dream and Luigi were so important to this film, because they fill in that big old gap. And so, you know, there are a lot of films out there. I think they do unauthorized documentaries all the time, which is fine. But we definitely want to tell something with the family support, with the support of the friends. So again, we had that personal piece of the story, and you get to the heart of who Donyale Luna was, because it's so easy to just misunderstand her.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know,
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, you know, when it came to her, there was always that word, you know, misconception. Obviously, when you're watching a documentary, it's all about giving us something that we don't know about, or clearing up whatever misconceptions there were about her. And then you think about it, it's like, okay, why is it that she's not known in the Black community to that extent? We all know, obviously, the supermodels that came in afterwards, you know, and was it her team? Everything's all about marketing, you know? And obviously, when you're watching the story, you saw how little they try to market her when she did try to go out, you know? So, like, I'm asking you guys, you know, why do you think, you know, obviously, Issa, you're instrumental because you did that piece on her. What made you do the piece on her in the beginning, and then for this documentary to take place?
Well, we were like so many other people who we're hearing from now. We were just shocked to find out about her. You know, I was someone who's worked in fashion, editorial, the majority of my career. And when I found out about her, I was just literally blown away. So that's why I was so just adamant about wanting to put this story on a bigger scale, you know, because she was so instrumental. Like, she's so influential. She's influenced people without them even knowing she influenced them. And I think Nailah made a good point that after 68, you know, it seems like that kind of disappeared and goes into becoming, you know, into this life in Europe. But she actually was working, you know, actually was doing a lot of things. And what people don't understand or realize is that the movie Mahogany that Diana Ross and Billy D. Williams stars in, where Diana Ross is a model, that movie is based on Donyale's life, you know? And so Donyale was living this life in Paris and living this life in Rome. I mean, and I think because back then, there was no viral moments, there was no internet, you know, there was none of this. So when you're during that time, and she's in Europe during the time right after the civil rights movement, and everyone here is back in America, she's living this huge life. How would they know? Like, I don't know how many Black people were reading British Vogue at the time, you know? So I think it was very easy for her and her story to get lost, you know? And especially since she's trying to live, I think one of the most revolutionary things about her is that she was pushing to live this life she was pushing to live her dreams in a time when Black people couldn't even think to dream. We were just trying to survive, right? And so she's trying to live her dreams. And I think that's one of the reasons why her story was lost, because she was pushing against a machine that was telling her that she was not good enough, but she just knew that she was.
Yeah, and to your point, Isoul, I'm sorry, but to your point, I think when we start to question, why don't we know her? A lot of people don't want to talk about why we know her. People in the fashion world who are pulling references, who I feel like the fashion world knew who she was. The masses did not know. But if we start to question and push the fashion world, why don't we know her? Then we have to talk about what happened to her and what her experience was. And then that's going to make us look at other people that we hold in high regard a different way. Right. And so I think all of that, we weren't as globally connected as we are now. That's one reason. I think it was because Luna was very elusive about her racial makeup. That's another one. And then I think also because if we start to tell the story of Donyale Luna, then we have to really charge the fashion industry to take a deep look at themselves and say, what did we do then? And then how are we still doing those things today? Are we still allowing people in power to set up barriers for Black women who are extraordinarily beautiful, extraordinarily capable, but not allowed to reach the heights of their career just because of their race?
The film has some animation in there, obviously footage from what she's done, photos. As a director, who's done obviously as a project, what part of your skill set was new for you as you did this, or what did you learn from your last project that you took into this and said, okay, I'm gonna do the same, or I'm gonna do something different?
Well, that's the great thing about directing and filmmaking. One thing I love, that you're constantly learning and you're collaborating with other creatives who can teach you things. Nosheen Dadaboy, who's a cinematographer on this film, who I think did a fantastic job. We met at a chicken and egg lab. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Chicken and Egg, but they support independent documentary filmmakers, independent documentary female and non-binary filmmakers. And so we met, and in those labs, you're just inundated with beautiful, artful films. And so I think working with her and us just collaborating and talking about films that we loved, for me, I think it's definitely stepped up my game as a director. Ed Perkins, who is a director and but also the editor of this film, came on board, and working with him was just extraordinary. I think because he had a certain boldness, and it helped me to kind of open up and be a bit bolder on this project. And we were talking about how best to kind of bring people into Luna's world. And it was Ed who was like, well, I wonder if HBO will give us money for animation. The budget was already set. Because Donyale, not only was did she have this fantastic photography collection, she also drew. And you'll see a little bit of that. All of the animation is either the reference for it is either something that she drew or a photograph that she had taken. And so that first piece of animation was actually from one of her drawings. And so once Ed kind of planted the seed, we started to go back to HBO. And then Melanie Cherie, who's a producer on the film as well, helped to find the animator, Kenise Fatima. It was her first time. Kenise was only maybe 2 years out of school. I want to say she's 24. So that's who we could afford. But when we were interviewing her, she was, her references were just so dope. She was like, do you want animation like this from the 70s? And this is an early 20-something-year-old woman, and she can pull those references. I was like, oh my God. So just those little collaborations, well, not little, those collaborations were just, huge and transformative for the project. And, I brought her through the parts of the story that we wanted to tell. And we just worked on like what it would look like. I just wanted it to look like Luna, even to the point where the goddess that you see flying around, I think at one point somebody wanted her to be like colorless. And I was like, no, we're making it brown, because I think that's the other point of this film. She was the first Black supermodel. We should not let that be lost again. And so this goddess that you see roaming around the whole planet, being fabulous and just searching for her freedom, her true self, she's going to be a brown little goddess. And Kenise got all of that. It was just, I'm really proud, but also super grateful for everybody that was a part of this, because I think we made something beautiful.
As I mentioned before, marketing is everything. So how important was it to have this air during Fashion Week? Isoul?
Oh,
That was
hugely important. Go ahead, Isoul. This is your world.
hugely important. It's so funny. We just had so many talks amongst the four of us, like the four core filmmakers, Nailah, our fearless director, and the other two producers and myself. We were like, okay, this would be amazing if we could premiere this, during Fashion Week in September, because Luna was so, like I said before, just so influential to all these people who are in the fashion world at this moment. So we were so lucky that HBO shared our vision and wanted to make this happen, and made it happen pretty quickly for us, and so we were really thankful for that.
And I don't think I realized kind of the appetite that the fashion world had for Luna. Like, once we dropped the trail, once we dropped the branded image, people were really leaning in. And then when we dropped the trailer, I was like, oh my goodness, like they've been waiting for her.
Absolutely.
And then at the premiere, it was just outstanding. So that was amazing. And so that's just one thing. I mean, I think HBO got it, and I'm so happy that they did, because even like I didn't understand, and I'm still just kind of getting. I'm like, oh wow, like people have been waiting for Donyale Luna, and finally, she's here.
Speaking to that point about people waiting, I've gotten so many just people reaching out and just saying like, thank you for the story. And even someone like Rhodes, who was so happy that he came to our screening, and he's, huge in the fashion world. He was like, this film is spectacular. And he's someone who was appreciative of Donyale's work, and he brought Zendaya in to express, Zendaya's work Daniel's work on the cover of Essence at one point. So like Nailah said, the fashion world was just, and the world, even beyond fashion, was just waiting for Donyale's story, and they connect to her story and resonate with her story.
This has been a journey for you, Isoul. It's almost like, not in the negative, but the albatross is now off. Because I always say when it's a passion project, it's a long journey. And obviously I've known you for some time as a journalist, but is this now your new entry to the film world? Are we going to see more projects out of you, or is this a one and done?
No, not one and done whatsoever. I told Nailah when we first started this, I was like, Nailah, I want to do more films, beyond this, and definitely not one and done. And anyone who knows me knows that this is something I've learned like over my career. Creativity is transferable. And just because you're one thing doesn't mean you can't be another thing or another thing or another thing. And I know just my years of being an editor and an editorial director, I've been putting magazines together for the past like 20 years. And it's similar to like filmmaking, putting a story together and constructing the story. And I learned so much, from filmmaking, from working with Nailah and all these other producers and editors. But no, this is my first entry point into this. And I look forward to producing and possibly even directing one day.
And it's tremendous. I mean, a first-time producer with a film on HBO, that doesn't happen. Black man does not happen. You know what I'm saying? So kudos, you and Melissa. Amazing job.
Thank you.
What's your takeaway from this, Nailah? As you learned more about filmmaking, as you come on the subject, where do you go from here?
Oh God, hopefully just up.
Not hopefully, you are going up.
What do I learn? I think as I grow, just trusting my vision and using my voice more. This was an interesting journey because it was the first project that's really in the studio system for me. And so just learning how to navigate that was a learning lesson. Well, I keep saying learning, but that was a lesson in itself. But within that, you have to just, because you have a couple more different factors, different voices coming in. But I think still trusting yours, but also like leaning into the collaboration and hearing other people and figuring out the best balance. But it's possible. I think a lot of people don't think it's possible. It is, because I feel like this film still feels like art, which is what I wanted it to be. But then it still satisfies the other things from a commercial point of view that people wanted. And I think that's really why people are leaning in, audiences are leaning in, because it's not leaning too far avant-garde, but also but we maintain the heart, and it's not leaning too far commercial where you lose the heart of it. So I think we struck a good balance.
All right, hey, Donyale Luna currently playing on Max, and it's the story of a fashion model that no one knew about, but they will now. So thank you for coming on. Let's keep promoting this and keep working so that way everybody knows what you're doing, and we're here to support.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wilson. Thank you.